What is up, fanatics, Fanguy addicts? Josh Fanguy back for the third installment of the Ultimate Fanguy. Yes, Josh Fanguy is my real name. Yes, it was a perfect name for me as a child. I am a fan of everything. Well, most everything. Definitely most everything, but not quite everything. I have a lot of opinions on a lot of things that I think are better than most people's opinions. So I felt it was my duty to the human race and incumbent upon me to share my love and passion of everything with you guys. So today we had a little bit of I had a little bit of a, I wasn't quite sure what today's topic was going to be. It was either going to be my top 10 video games of all time, which is coming later this week, or it was going to be what I decided to go with, which is my personal favorite top 11 pre-2000 era TV shows. These are going to be some fairly obscure shows that were on during my high school, middle school, and elementary school years that I kind of have nostalgia about. It's going to show you how incredibly old I am. And these are all shows that if you haven't seen or aren't aware of, something you definitely may want to check out because quite a few of them are pretty entertaining. The one caveat I'm going to give to that is number 11, which we're going to start with. This is not a show that, as an adult, I care to watch. And the reason I say that is because I have tried to watch it recently because it brings up a lot of feelings of nostalgia in me from when I was a kid. And so I was like, oh, I remember this show. I'm going to check it out. And I watched it as an adult, and it didn't have the same kind of magic, admittedly. But if you got kiddos, this is a great show for kids. I remember it used to, it was one of the shows I would always stay up, and really not want to ever miss a new episode of it. I even had I vividly remember having some nightmares as a kid because of it. But when you watch it as an adult, it's not nearly as scary. And that is, Are You Afraid of the Dark? It was on Nickelodeon. It came on maybe Wednesday nights, I believe. And it was just a show about a bunch of kids sitting around a campfire telling various horror stories to each other. Every episode was a different kid getting to tell their story, their different horror story. Like I said, as I've grown up, the stories aren't really scary now. But I remember as a kid, I really enjoyed this show. And I felt like just because of the massive amount of nostalgia it brought up in me, that it would be a crime to leave it off the list because there was a period of my life where this show rocked. And so if you got kids and you can get a hold of it, cool show for kids. Kind of a little horror thing based on like campfire tales. Pretty cool show. Moving on to number 10, this is definitely a show I would recommend for just about anybody. Sliders. It is a show that I think was before its time, and you even see traces of the concept in today's shows like The Man in the High Castle. Anything with like an alternate fringe, anything with like an alternate reality, alternate universe, time travel type thing. If you dig that, you're definitely going to dig Sliders. It stars the O'Connell. And then this guy, don't know his real name, but he was in Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade as their friend. And it's just kind of about a group of people who start sliding into alternate dimensions, alternate realities of Earth, where everything is kind of different from one reality to another. It's a really cool show. Again, I do think it was a little bit ahead of its time, and it kind of didn't have the full run it deserved because obviously with that kind of material, you can do anything. But definitely worth a watch. If you haven't seen it, you're not aware of it, this is one of the shows that I think somewhat survived the test of time and is watchable even today. And to anyone who's like a sci-fi fan, you will enjoy Sliders. So I would definitely give Sliders a chance. That is number 10. Number 9. This one's kind of a cop-out because there is a very famous movie called Weird Science that is an excellent movie. If you haven't seen or heard of it, definitely watch the movie. The show might be a little harder to get your hands on, but it's based on the same exact concept. It was just turned into a TV show. Basically, two lovable loser high school people um, create their perfect woman on their computer and they bring her to life. And that's Vanessa Angel, who, maybe I had a crush on her when I was growing up. I thought she was just the hottest thing since sliced bread. So that definitely made the show easier to watch. And then you got this guy who's just in tons of stuff, man. I'm going to look up his real name after the show. He's in tons of stuff, the brother Chet, and he plays that role perfectly. Um, this is just a really good show. Like I said, it's based on the same stuff the movie is. They create their perfect woman, and then she's almost like a genie too. She can like do just about anything, and it's a cool show. It's a fun, happy, nostalgic inducing show. If you're from that area, you'll definitely dig it. Not quite as good as the movie, but not much is. So Weird Science coming in at number 9. Now number 8 is going to be one of the more obscure titles on this list that I think more people are going to be unfamiliar with than are going to be familiar with, and that is Parker Lewis Can't Lose. This is a TV show that I can't help but think was created based semi-loosely on like a Ferris Bueller. It revolves around Parker Lewis, who's the guy in the middle at the bottom, and his high school life where he's kind of like Ferris Bueller. He's kind of like the king of the school. He's got the bully, the guy who's hugging them all is the big bully. He's got the friend squad that's around him, and they just it's like Saved by the Bell meets Ferris Bueller. It was a great show. I remember loving it when I was young, and it just follows to bring you back to high school life. And if you like Ferris Bueller sort of comedies that were made for TV, Parker Lewis Can't Lose is definitely a good one. It's one, like I said, I don't think a lot of people are familiar with, but if you can get your hands on it somehow or watch a couple episodes, I definitely think you'll like it. Excuse me. Moving on from one of the least popular shows, or least known shows on the list, to probably the most known show on the list. So I had a hard time, almost didn't include this because I don't really feel like it's that obscure, and that's kind of what I was going for on this list, was slightly more obscure stuff. But I felt like maybe it was just obscure enough, maybe, to get a spot. And that's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show. Obviously also modeled after a movie starring Christy Swanson, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie. And then they made it in a TV show. It's got the Boreanaz guy. There was tons of spin-offs from it. You had Angel, like, Eliza Dushku, one of my early all-time crushes right there. Sarah Michelle Gellar obviously plays Buffy. It's about a high school cheerleader who becomes a defender of light and vampire slayer, and all the people that surround her, and just kind of her life as a vampire slayer. I mean, let's be real. You should probably know what Buffy the Vampire Slayer is. But if you don't, that's what it's about, and it's a really cool show. It's one of the other shows I think you could definitely still watch today and not feel like it's outdated that bad. Really cool show. If you're into sci-fi, action, vampire stuff, definitely worth the watch, and definitely one of the more popular known titles on this list. Number 6. This was, as weird as it sounds, like this was my absolute favorite show growing up. For the longest period of time, I would say. Obviously, it's not my favorite because it's number 6 and not number 1. But this show for me spanned the entirety of my youth, and I could watch repeat episodes, reruns. You never knew it. You never knew what episode was which because of the theme of the show, and it had an abrupt kind of bad ending that people didn't like either. But Quantum Leap is about a guy, Scott Bakula, who leaps, or he like transfers his soul into other people's bodies, and he controls them while trying to right a wrong or do something that will change the course of their life or the world for the better. and then he leaps out of their body, and then they become themselves again, except their life, is without whatever tragedy happened. So he's kind of a good guy who is sent into different people's bodies at different periods of time throughout history in order to right wrongs that were committed against them or that were committed against the world. It's a very cool show. He's got his hologram friend Al, who is his hologram that's kind of his conscience and helps him through it all. And the whole time he's trying to leap, he gets stuck in this cycle because he can't control who he's leaping into, and he just wants to leap back into his own body and in the whole nightmare he's having, where he's having to live through all these other people, sometimes he leaps into women, he leaps into just all kinds of crazy, interesting situations. There's like he'll leap into like a war or a battle. It's a wild show. It's very creative, very cool show. It went on for a while. There were a lot of seasons of it, and if you're not familiar with Quantum Leap and haven't seen it, this is a classic show that I would recommend to anybody of any age. It is a great show. So Quantum Leap, number 6. Number 5. This reminds me of me and my buddy G. We were at a bar maybe 5 or 6 years, no, more like 10 years ago. And we ran into a Xena the Warrior Princess cosplayer, but she wasn't like cosplaying at the time. She just played the lookalike when she went to conventions. And I'll never forget, she's in this bar, just packed bar of people, and she's going, the Xena Warrior Princess chant. If you don't know it, it's because you haven't seen the show. Needless to say, that's her little war cry. I think I do it pretty good. Number 5, Xena Warrior Princess. This follows, Lucy Lawless, who is Xena Warrior Princess. She is a vigilante for justice. She initially started as a criminal, but she turns into a good guy, and she fights the forces of evil and tries to help the world. It's a very standard sort of, action show from this period of time. And, there's not much else to say about it. She uses a bunch of cool weapons. She's good at combat. She's got some cool little friends that follow her around while she saves the world from the evil people and evil gods type people. She's Xena Warrior Princess. And if you haven't seen Xena, definitely worth a look. Now, I'm going to segue that into the next show because Xena didn't originate as her own show. She was a character on this next show, which I loved. And that is Hercules, the Legendary Journey, starring that man, Kevin Motherfucking Sorbo. This show follows Hercules as he also, it's very similar to Xena. Go figure. They both originated on this show. Xena actually started as a bad guy on Hercules, the Legendary Journeys. But through Hercules' love and valor and awesomeness, Xena was shown the right way to be. And that's because, it's Hercules. It follows his chronicles, and you kind of get some, mythological references here. He's doing battle with his stepmother, Hera, the god. And, he has a run-in with the Cyclops. So it's very, it was mythological, but it ran for a few seasons. And it's very similar to Xena. He just kind of travels the world helping people and, righting wrongs and stuff like that. Funny little side note story to this. I had a vision this year, like maybe 6 months ago, where, and I'm going to reference an Arrested Development thing here from the show Arrested Development, which was on our last episode. Carl Weathers in Arrested Development teaches an acting class to one of the characters, and he's like, Carl Weathers acting class. And I always pictured Kevin Sorbo could do the same thing except like kissing for the screen. Kevin Sorbo teaches kissing for the screen because every episode, basically, this dude is kissing a different hottie. So Kevin Sorbo, if you're out there and you're watching this, I think you can make a killing teaching kissing for the screen because you, my man, have a lot of practice at it, and you did a great job with Hercules: The Legendary Journeys. This actually spun off one of my, not really spun off, but I feel like Legend of the Seeker, which is a more recent show, so it couldn't make this list, but it will make my list of just flat out obscure great shows. Legend of the Seeker, great show, similar, more recent version of all this kind of stuff, and it was off of a book series. But if you haven't seen Hercules: Legendary Journeys, you don't know what you're missing. That comes in at number 4. Now these top 3 really are my 3 favorite shows from my early years. Number 3 is the only animated show on this list, and it is Exo Squad. This is my favorite cartoon of all time. It follows, man, it's a deep show too. It is. I wish it would have run for so much longer than it did. I think there was only 2 seasons of it that I was fortunate enough to find a copy of not too long ago. So I actually have Exo Squad. Um, it it is set in the future where we started exploring space and we came across another humanoid species. That's the blue guy right there. It's their species, the Neo Sapiens, and they, without trying to give too much away about the show, basically we kind of forced them into slavery because they're big and strong and stuff, and we were more technologically advanced, but they ended up revolting, and they're smarter and stronger and better than us in pretty much every way. So we, the humans, developed these mech machines, the called E-frames, and everyone's different. That's the main character, JT Marsha, is right there. But all the Exo Squad vehicles are different. They each suit their driver, and it's basically about the war between the humans and the Neo Sapiens. And there's a lot of espionage. There's some plot twists and turns. It's the first show. My roommate actually told me this recently that I didn't know about this show, and it was the first show of its kind to actually kill people off and have them stay dead. So it's interesting when a cartoon does that, and so when people die in Exo Squad, they're dead. And it follows the kind of the main squad of humans, resistance fighters that are trying to battle the Neo Sapiens. It's an amazing show. It is way ahead of its time. It could have easily been number 1 on my list if I didn't love the next 2 shows so much. Exo Squad is amazing. If you haven't heard of it or haven't seen it, try to find a way to see it because it is well worth seeing. There are some cool characters, some cool action sequences. It's definitely from the late 80s, early 90s in terms of the animation, but it's really good. Really, really good. Easily my favorite cartoon of all time. Number 2 and number 1, these were really close for me because I watched them back to back, I think, at the exact same time of my life. And these were 2 shows that I never missed. I used to record on my VHS tapes so that I could have all the episodes. And number 1 edges out number 2 by a little, and I'll get to that in a second. But number 2, Kung Fu. The legend continues. There's no actual subtitles. This is in English. This is about, there was actually an older show called Kung Fu about a Shaolin monk and, his adventures or whatever. This show was a spinoff of that. And, it followed David Carradine, who's Kwai Chang Caine, R.I.P. David Carradine, and his son, who I don't know his real name because I don't think he ever did anything after this show. And David Carradine kind of comes out of the woodworks. He's a monk. He shows up in the big city where his son is a cop. And basically, together they fight crime and fight evil, weird forces sometimes. But mostly crime. And it's partially about their development as a father and son and their connection and growth after being away from each other for so long. They thought each other were dead. and then they come together. So it's kind of like them rebuilding their relationship while fighting bad guys. How much better does it get? It doesn't get much better. I'm just going to tell you. This show, super worth a watch. Again, might be a little hard to find, but it is Kung Fu, The Legend Continues. It comes in at number 2, and if you like action shows, it is definitely worth a watch. Number 1. This is also a show that I would not be surprised if you have not heard of at all. Time Tracks, starring Dale Midkiff. Most people probably know him better from Pet Sematary Uno. He was the dad in Pet Sematary. He plays Darian Lambert, a cop from the future who is sent back, and basically it's time travel was just kind of invented and outlawed. So no one can time travel once it was invented, but criminals are escaping the future to the past to escape justice. So basically, they commit a crime in the future and they travel to the past. So there's something where he doesn't go back and forth between the future and the past. Like once you're in the past, you only get like one return trip to the future or something like that. So he's a cop who goes back to the past to catch criminals who have escaped from the future to the past. Most of them bringing futuristic technology with them, futuristic knowledge with them, and he's got this cool car alarm keychain that shoots these little different colored lasers, and one of the lasers sends the criminal back to the future where they can be processed for justice. He has a cool credit card that has a hologram on it that helps him. It is, it's kind of a cheesy show, and it's probably just number 1 on my list because when this show was in its peak form and prime, it was my absolute go-to show. I love this show so much, and if you ever get a chance to see it or you haven't heard of it, definitely check Time Tracks out. It is a little dated, but I've watched it recently and it still hits home. It's just tough to find decent copies of it that aren't VHS quality. So there you have it, numero uno. Bet you didn't see that one coming. So these are my top 11 Fanguy approved pre-2000 era awesome TV shows. And if you've seen them, you have good taste. If you haven't seen them, watch them, because I'm sure if you're watching the show, you have good taste. So much love. Thank you for tuning in to episode 3. I hope I gave you some ideas of some vintage shows to check out next time you're bored. And much love. Thanks for stopping by the Ultimate Fan Guy. And we will be back tomorrow with probably the video game list. Much love. See you then.